Ha Jun stumbled through his penthouse door at 3 a.m. drunk, shaking with rage. The DNA results crumpled in his fist. Not his daughter. 8 years of his life, a lie. The woman he loved, a traitor, his body, broken, impotent, incapable of creating life. Everything was a lie. He could hear her voice through the kitchen door. That voice that had irritated him for 20 years. Mama Joy, his 65-year-old housekeeper, praying again. Always praying. Father God, reach his heart. Show him you're real. Use me if you have to. My life is yours. Show him your power. Something inside Ha Jun snapped. He slammed the door open. Mama Joy looked up from her knees, her face startled, seeing the alcohol and devastation in his eyes. You want your God to use you? Ha Jun's voice was barely human. You want to preach to me about miracles and restoration and impossible things. She stood slowly, backing away. Boss Nim, please. You're drunk. I'm drunk. I'm broken. I'm impotent. He moved toward her, unsteady on his feet. Medical tests prove I can't father children. You're barren. 6 husbands, 40 years, and your God never gave you what you prayed for. Her back hit the wall. So, let's test your faith, Mama J. He grabbed her arm. She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. You say your God does impossible things, that he restores the broken bosom. No, then let him prove it. Ha Jun pulled her toward him. Tonight, through you. Mama Joy's scream was cut off as he covered her mouth. 20 years of faithful service, 20 years of prayers, 20 years of believing God would show up. And this was her answer. If you felt that tension, that impossibility, that mix of darkness and rage, hit subscribe because this story is about to show you how worst moments create the most impossible. But before we go on, let me tell you how we got here. Because Mama Joy's story didn't start in Seoul. It started 45 years ago in Lagos, Nigeria, with a wedding dress and a prayer that seemed destined to go unanswered. Joy Debussy was 20 years old when she married her first husband. Beautiful. Full of hope, believing that God had blessed her union. They tried for children immediately. Month after month, year after year, nothing happened. At first, her husband was patient. Then his mother started asking questions. Then came the doctor visits. Then came the diagnosis that would haunt her for the next 4 decades. Severe infertility, damaged reproductive system, medical impossibility of natural conception. Her first husband divorced her after 5 years, sent her back to her family with nothing but shame. The second husband was older, a widower with grown children. He said he didn't need more kids, just wanted a companion. He lied. After 3 years of trying and failing to give him a son, he beat her and threw her out. Husbands 3, 4, 5, and 6 followed the same pattern. Hope, attempts, doctors, blame, shame, abandonment. By the time she was 45 years old, Joy and Ducey had been married and divorced 6 times, all for the same reason, all ending with the same whispers. Cursed, barren, worthless. In her community, a woman without children was worse than nothing. She was proof of God's rejection, a walking shame, an object of pity and mockery. After her 6th divorce, she couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't face another pitying look, another whispered prayer behind her back, another aunt asking when she'd finally accept that God had closed her womb. So, she sold everything. Her mother's gold jewelry, her small shop in the market, her properties, everything she owned, and she bought a one-way ticket to Seoul, South Korea. As far from the shame as money could take her, she arrived with 1 suitcase, 45 years old, no family, no connections, no plan except to disappear where nobody knew her story. An agency that placed domestic workers connected her with a wealthy family. The job description said, live-in housekeeper, permanent position, no family required. The employer was Ha Jun, 22 years old, newly inheriting his father's criminal empire. Cold but not yet cruel. Powerful but not yet broken. Joy became Mama Joy, or Mama J, as Ha Jun eventually shortened it. She kept his house, cooked his meals, cleaned his world while he built an empire on blood and fear. And she prayed every morning, every night, sometimes during the day when the loneliness got too heavy. She prayed for the child that had never come. She prayed for the shame to lift. She prayed for proof that God had him forgotten her. But more than that, she prayed for Ha Jun, watched him become harder over the years, colder, more ruthless, and she believed, truly believed, that God could reach even him. Boss Nim, she'd say in her Korean accented with Igbo rhythms. God sees you. He loves you. He can restore anything you've lost. He'd laugh, sometimes cruelly. Your God couldn't even give you children, Mama J. What can he do for me? The words always cut deep. But she kept praying, kept believing, kept hoping. 20 years passed like that. Ha Jun built his empire. Mama Joy built her faith. And both of them carried secret wounds they thought would never heal. Then 3 weeks ago, everything shattered. Ha Jun had a woman in his life. Park Ji-won. Beautiful, sophisticated, the closest thing to love a man like him could experience. They'd been together for 9 years. She'd given him a daughter, Yoon-Jin. 8 years old, smart, beautiful, the one light in Ha Jun's dark world. He'd been there when Jin was born. Held her in the delivery room. Felt something crack open in his chest when she'd wrapped her tiny hand around his finger. He wasn't soft. Couldn't afford to be in his world. But Jin was his weakness, his heir, his reason. Then Jivan tried to run. Ha Jun's security caught her at Incheon Airport with Jin and another man, King Taeng. Ha Jun's business rival, his enemy. Under interrogation, Jeon confessed everything. She'd been sleeping with Taeng for 10 years since before Jin was born. The pregnancy had been intentional. Taeng's plan to plant his child in Ha Jun's household, raise an heir in the enemy's home, eventually steal the empire from within. Ha Jun had ordered a DNA test immediately. Had to know for sure. The results came back 2 weeks ago. Yoon-Jin was not his biological daughter, and worse. The test revealed Ha Jun had severe oligospermia, sperm count so low that natural conception was medically impossible. He was functionally impotent. Had been for years, probably since the assassination attempt when he was 19. Left bullet fragments pressing against his spine, which meant he'd never been able to father a child. Jin was never his. Could never have been his. Everything he'd believed about his life was a lie. Ha Jun had Jivan and Taeyeon killed slowly, painfully. But he couldn't kill the pain inside himself. Couldn't kill the emptiness. Couldn't kill the realization that he was broken in ways that power and money couldn't fix. And he couldn't kill Jin. The girl wasn't his blood. But she didn't know that. Still called him Appa. Still ran to him with drawings from school. Still looked at him like he hung the moon. So he kept her. But everything felt hollow now. His empire felt meaningless. His power felt empty. For 3 weeks, he drowned himself in alcohol, functioning during the day, destroying himself at night. And Mama Joy watched with worried eyes, prayed harder, spoke more boldly about God's power to restore, which brought them to that night, 3 weeks after the DNA results. After Ha Jun had drunk enough soju to numb his brain, but not his rage, when he'd heard Mama Joy praying for him, praying that God would use her to reach him, something inside him broke completely. He'd stumbled into her small room off the kitchen. That room where she'd lived for 20 years, where she'd prayed for 40 years for a child that never came. And he'd used her faith against her. Used her body to rage against a God he didn't believe in. Used her prayers as permission to violate the one person who'd been faithful to him for 2 decades. When it was over, he'd stumbled to his room and passed out. Mama Joy lay in her small bed, 65 years old, barren, violated by the man she'd prayed for 20 years. And she wept. But even through the tears, even through the pain, she whispered, "Father, if there's any purpose in this, show me, please." She didn't expect an answer. God had been silent about her barrenness for 40 years. Why would he speak now? 6 weeks later, everything changed. Mama Joy woke up nauseous. It had been happening for days. Waves of sickness that left her dizzy and weak. Her body felt different, heavy, strange in ways she couldn't name. At first, she thought it was illness, stress, Trauma from that night she tried not to think about. But the nausea continued. Her breast became tender. She was exhausted in ways that felt both familiar and impossible. Then one morning, standing in the bathroom, something clicked in her mind. A memory from 45 years ago, her first pregnancy attempt. The symptoms she'd learned to recognize and then learned to stop hoping for. No, impossible. She was 65. She'd gone through menopause 15 years ago. Her body couldn't, but the symptoms persisted. After 2 weeks of denial, Mama Joy took a bus to a pharmacy in a neighborhood where nobody knew her. Bought a pregnancy test with shaking hands. Came home when Ha Jun was at a business meeting. Locked herself in the bathroom. The test turned positive in seconds. She took 3 more, all positive. Mama Joy sank to the bathroom floor, staring at 4 positive tests, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. The next day, she went to a clinic across the city, paid cash, used a fake name. The doctor did an ultrasound, and there on the screen was a tiny heartbeat. 6 weeks along. The doctor stared at the screen, then at Mama Joy's face, then back at the screen. At your age, this is medically extraordinary. Unprecedented, actually. I know, Mama Joy whispered. The doctor ran more tests. Blood work, hormone levels, everything. All confirmed the same impossible truth. Joy and Ducey, 65 years old, barren for 40 years, was pregnant and the baby was healthy. Mama Joy went home in a daze. That night, alone in her room, she fell to her knees. You answered, she whispered to God. After 40 years, you answered, but why like this? Why through pain? And in the quiet of her heart, she felt something like peace, like purpose, like a promise. I'm doing something impossible. Trust me. Drop a comment below if you're feeling this. If you've ever prayed for something for years and wondered if God was listening, because this story is about to show you what happens when the impossible becomes real. For 3 months, Mama Joy hid the pregnancy. It was easy at first. She wore loose traditional dresses, claimed stress was making her gain weight, avoided Ha Jun as much as possible. Ha Jun barely noticed anyway. He was consumed with his empire, with his rage at Jaiwon's betrayal, with the daughter who wasn't his, but who he couldn't let go. He'd been colder to Mama Joy since that night. Avoided her. Couldn't look at her without feeling shame mixed with anger mixed with something he refused to name. At 3 months, Mama Joy went back to the clinic for another ultrasound. The doctor stared at the screen for a long time, then looked at Mama Joy with an expression caught between awe and disbelief. There are 2 heartbeats, she said quietly. Mama Joy's heart stopped. What? Twins? A boy and a girl? Both developing normally despite. She gestured at the medical impossibility of it all. Twins. At 65, after 40 years of barrenness from a man who was medically impotent. Mama Joy walked out of that clinic and sat on a bench outside, staring at the ultrasound images in her hands, and finally let herself believe God had done this. God had answered, not just with 1 miracle, but 2. But she also knew she couldn't stay. If Ha Jun discovered this pregnancy, he'd never believe it was his. He'd kick her out, call her crazy, maybe worse. And even if he somehow believed it, even if DNA tests proved it, she couldn't let him have these babies, these miracles that God had given her after 40 years of prayers. These children were her answer, her vindication, her proof that God hadn't forgotten her. She wouldn't let anyone take them away. At 4½ months pregnant, Mama Joy started planning her escape. She had money saved. 20 years of modest salary, carefully hoarded, not much, but enough to disappear. She had connections in Seoul's Nigerian community, people who would help, who would hide her, who would understand, and she had faith that if God had done this impossible thing, he would protect what he'd created. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Joy and Ducey disappeared. Ha Jun woke up to silence. No breakfast cooking, no coffee waiting, no Mama Joy humming gospel songs while she cleaned. Her small room was empty. Her few possessions gone. Her clothes gone. The worn Bible she read every morning gone. On the kitchen table, a single envelope with his name. written in her careful handwriting. Ha Jun opened it with hands that suddenly weren't steady. The letter was short, direct, impossible. Bosnim, for 20 years, I prayed for you. I prayed that God would show you his power, that he would prove he is real. You asked me that night if my God does impossible things. You asked him to prove it through me. He did. I am pregnant. At 65 years old, after 40 years of barrenness with your children, twins, a boy and a girl, the doctors have no explanation. The medical tests confirm it's impossible, but it's happening anyway. This is the miracle you demanded, the proof you asked for, but I cannot stay. These babies are my answer to 40 years of prayers. God has finally given me what I begged for my entire life. I will not let anyone take this from me. When you are ready to believe that God is real, that he does impossible things, that he can restore even the most broken life, you will find us. Until then, we are his, not yours. May God have mercy on your soul. Joy. And Ducey attached to the letter was an ultrasound image. 2 tiny forms, clear as day. Ha Jun read the letter 3 times. Then he laughed. Bitter, broken, insane, pregnant at 65 with his twins when he was medically impotent. It was impossible. It was a lie. It was he stopped laughing. Called his private doctor. Had blood drawn immediately. Demanded DNA testing against any genetic material Mama Joy might have left behind. The doctor found hair from her brush, skin cells from her pillowcase. Results came back 3 days later. The ultrasound was real, the pregnancy was real, and genetically the fetuses were his. Impossible, but confirmed. Ha Jun sat in his office staring at the DNA results. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know what he believed anymore. His entire worldview said this couldn't happen. Science said it was impossible. Logic said Mama Joy was lying. But the DNA didn't lie. At 65 years old, his barren housekeeper was carrying his twins, and she'd vanished to protect them from him. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button because this man's entire world is about to get turned upside down. And the search for this woman, it's going to change him in ways he never saw coming. For 2 weeks, Ha Jun torso apart looking for Mama Joy. His men searched every Nigerian community center, every church, every apartment building where Africans lived. Nothing. She'd vanished completely. His contacts had no information. His money bought no answers. It was like she'd disappeared into thin air. Then his world got more complicated. 8-year-old Ha Jun, the daughter who wasn't his blood, but who he'd raised since birth, overheard 2 of his household staff gossiping. Did you hear? Boss isn't her real father. That's why her mother tried to run. Ha Jun ran from the house before they could finish. Ha Jun got the call 2 hours later. His daughter was missing. Every resource he'd been using to find Mama Joy immediately redirected to finding Ha Jun. His men combed the city, called every contact, checked security cameras. They found her 6 hours later sitting on a bench in a park crying. Ha Jun drove there himself, found her alone on that bench. This little girl who'd called him Appa for 8 years, her face red from crying. He sat down beside her, didn't speak, just sat. Finally, Ha Jun whispered, "Am I still yours? Even if I'm not really yours." Something in Ha Jun's chest cracked open. He'd killed for this child, built empires for her, protected her, loved her, and she wasn't his blood. But sitting there looking at her tear-stained face, he realized it didn't matter. "Yes," he said quietly. "You're mine. You'll always be mine. Even though my real father is, I'm your real father," Ha Jun interrupted. "Blood doesn't make a father. Being there does. Loving you does, and I do. I love you." Ha Jun threw herself into his arms and cried, and Ha Jun held her and understood something for the first time. If he could love a child that wasn't his blood, if biology didn't matter for Ha Jun, then maybe God could love broken people too. Maybe grace wasn't about deserving. Maybe it was about being chosen anyway. The realization didn't make him believe in God. Not yet. But it made him think, and it made him realize if he ever found Mama Joy and those twins, he couldn't just take them. He'd have to earn the right to be their father. The same way he'd earned the right to be Ha Jun's. 3 months after Mama Joy disappeared. 7 months into her pregnancy, Ha Jun finally got a lead. One of his men reported seeing an elderly African woman at a Korean Nigerian church service in Seongbuk district. She'd been very pregnant. People had been protective of her. Ha Jun went to the church the following Sunday. The service was in Korean and English, vibrant and loud in ways Korean churches never were. People danced, shouted, praised. It was completely foreign to him. And there in the third row was Mama Joy, 7 months pregnant, visibly carrying twins, glowing despite her age. Ha Jun's breath caught. She looked happy, peaceful, more alive than he'd ever seen her. After the service, he tried to approach. A wall of Nigerian men and women immediately blocked his path. "You need to leave," one man said in Korean. His name tag said, "Pastor Kelvin, I need to speak to her." "No." A woman said, "You hurt her, used her." A woman old enough to be your mother. "Now you want to take her babies?" "No. They're my children." "Are they?" Pastor Kelvin's voice was quiet but hard. "Because a father protects, provides, loves." "What did you do?" "You took. You hurt. You violated. That doesn't make you a father. That makes you a predator." The words hit like bullets. "She told us everything." Another woman said, "What you did, how you mocked her faith and then used it against her. You think you can just show up and claim these miracle babies?" "No." Ha Jun saw Mama Joy watching from behind them, her hand on her swollen belly, her eyes sad but firm. "Please," he said. And the word felt foreign in his mouth. "I need to talk to her. You need to leave." Pastor Kelvin said, "And if you ever want to be part of those children's lives, you need to prove you've changed. Prove you're worthy because right now you're not." Security escorted him out. Ha Jun sat in his car outside that church for an hour, shaking with rage and shame and something that felt terrifyingly like conviction. They were right. He wasn't worthy. Hadn't been worthy of Ha Jun either, but he tried to become worthy for her. Could he do it again? Could he become someone worthy of those twins? The next Sunday, Ha Jun showed up at the church service. Pastor Kelvin met him at the door. "I thought we told you." "I'm here for the service," Ha Jun said. Not to take her, not to demand anything, just to listen. The pastor studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. Ha Jun sat in the back row. Mama Joy saw him, her eyes widening, but she didn't leave, just watched him carefully. For 2 hours, Ha Jun sat through testimonies of God's faithfulness, songs about restoration, a sermon about impossible miracles. It was loud, emotional, completely outside his experience, but something in it felt real. He came back the next Sunday and the next and the next. The church community watched him like hawks. Didn't let him near Mama Joy, but they let him attend. After 4 weeks, Pastor Kelvin approached him. "Why are you here?" "I don't know," Ha Jun said honestly. "I just need to understand how she still believes after everything, how she still has hope. How God gave her this after 40 years. Do you believe it's from God?" "I don't know what I believe anymore," Ha Jun admitted. "But I saw the DNA results. It's impossible. She's 65. I'm impotent. But those babies are mine, ours. So if it's not God, what is it?" Pastor Kelvin smiled slightly. "That's the right question. Keep asking it." 8 months into the pregnancy, everything went wrong. Ha Jun was at the church for midweek service when it happened. Gunshots outside, screaming, people running. Ha Jun's instincts kicked in immediately. He knew that sound, knew what it meant. Attack. Pastor Kelvin was already moving, shepherding people to the back. "Get down, everyone down." But Ha Jun was moving toward the sound, toward the danger, because Mama Joy was here, and those were his enemies' guns. He burst through the church doors and saw them. For men, King Taeyong-uk's brother, King Minj and his crew. The men who wanted revenge for Taeyong-uk's death, who knew about the pregnancy, who knew these twins were Hun's biological heirs. If they killed Mama Joy and the babies, Ha Jun-uk's line ended. His empire would eventually fall to his rivals. Minjae saw Ha Jun and smiled. "There you are. We were hoping you'd show up. Makes this more satisfying." "This is a church," Ha Jun said, his voice deadly calm. "You want me fine, but leave these people alone." We don't want you dead, Ha Jun. We want you broken. Min-jae gestured toward the church. We want to kill what you love. Like you killed my brother. Behind Ha Jun, he could hear Pastor Kelvin getting people out of the back exit. Could hear Mama Joy's voice, frightened but strong, helping others escape. The old woman in there, Min-jae continued, carrying your miracle babies. Kill her, kill them, and you're left with nothing. Just like you left my brother with nothing. Ha Jun's hand went to the gun concealed at his back. 4 against 1. Bad odds, but doable. Then, he heard it. Mama Joy's voice. Everyone's out, Pastor. Everyone's safe. She was still inside, making sure everyone else got out first. Min-jae heard it too, smiled wider, raised his gun toward the church door. Ha Jun moved, threw himself in front of the entrance just as Min-jae fired. The bullet hit Ha Jun's shoulder, then his chest, then his side as the other men opened fire. He went down hard, body shielding the doorway, making himself the target so the bullets wouldn't reach. Inside, wouldn't reach Mama Joy, wouldn't reach his children. Through the haze of pain, he heard sirens, his own security arriving, the attackers running, and he heard Mama Joy scream, "Boss Nim, no, no, no." Then everything went black. Ha Jun woke up in a hospital 3 days later. Seo Jean was asleep in a chair beside his bed. Pastor Kelvin was sitting in another chair reading a Bible. The babies? Ha Jun's voice was barely a whisper. Alive. Pastor Emmanuel said, Mama Joy went into early labor from the stress. She delivered this morning. A boy and a girl, small but healthy, she's resting now. I want to see them. She said you could when you woke up. Pastor Kelvin closed his Bible. You took 3 bullets to protect her, to protect them. The community saw what you did. Is that enough? Han asked. To prove I've changed. Changed? Pastor Emmanuel leaned forward. You literally took bullets for a woman you violated and children you haven't even met. You've been coming to church for 2 months, listening, learning. You protected my congregation. So yes, I'd say you're trying. Whether you fully changed, that's between you and God. I'm not sure I believe in God, Han said honestly. You're lying in a hospital bed after taking bullets to protect superetic impossible miracle babies can see between a 65-year-old barren woman and an impotent man, and you're not sure you believe in God. Pastor Kelvin laughed. Brother, you're already halfway there. You just don't want to admit it. That evening they wheeled Ha Jun to Mama Joy's room. She was sitting up in bed, looking exhausted, but radiant. In her arms were 2 tiny babies, a boy and a girl. Ha Jun's breath stopped. Mama Joy looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, Come meet your children. Ha Jun wheeled closer, looked down at 2 perfect little faces, tiny hands curled into fists, both sleeping peacefully. The boy, I named him Chibu, Mama Joy said softly. It means God is king. The girl, Amara, Grace. Tears ran down Ha Jun's face. He didn't try to stop them. I don't deserve this, he whispered. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve them. No, Mama Joy agreed. You don't. None of us deserve God's grace. That's why it's called grace. She shifted baby Amara into his arms. Ha Jun held his daughter for the first time, feeling her tiny weight, seeing her little chest rise and fall with each breath. And something inside him shattered completely. All his power, all his control, all his empire. None of it mattered compared to this moment. Holding this impossible life, this miracle he didn't deserve. I'm sorry, he said, looking at Mama Joy. For what I did, for how I hurt you, for everything. I know, she said. I forgive you. How? How can you forgive that? Mama Joy smiled, tired, but genuine. Because God forgave me 40 years of bitterness about being barren, 40 years of thinking he'd abandon me, 40 years of shame and anger. And then he gave me this. She looked at the twins. If he can forgive me, restore me, give me miracles after 40 years. I can forgive you. If you're crying right now, you're not alone.
Hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you believe in impossible miracles, because this story isn't over yet. 6 months later, Seoul looked different to Yoon Ha Jun. Or maybe he looked different to Seoul. He'd restructured his criminal empire, not abandoned it. A man like him couldn't just walk away without becoming a target, but changed how he operated. Less violence, more strategic business. No human trafficking, no drugs, cleaner operations that let him sleep at night without seeing Mama Joy's face in his nightmares. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. Every month, large sums of money appeared in Mama Joy's bank account, anonymous, untraceable, enough to give the twins every advantage, every opportunity, every comfort. And once a week, late at night when the twins were sleeping, Ha Jun would stand across the street from Mama Joy's apartment building, the one he'd bought for her through a shell corporation, and watch the lights in her window. Security station nearby, invisible, but always present, protecting them from the shadows. The way he knew how to protect, he never went inside anymore. After the church attack, after he'd taken those bullets, after he'd held the twins for the first time in the hospital, Mama Joy had looked at him with sad, knowing eyes. "You can't be part of this world," she'd said gently, holding baby Chibu. "Not really. Your world and ours, they don't mix. What happened at the church proved that when you're near us, danger follows." "I know," he'd said, the hospital bandages still tight around his chest. "But they're my children, and they always will be. But from a distance, Ha Jun, for their safety, for mine." She'd reached across and touched his hand. "You can provide for them, protect them from afar. Watch them grow up, but you can't be in their daily lives. Not while you're still what you are." "A monster?" he'd asked bitterly. "A mafia boss," she'd corrected. "It's what you are, what you're built for. That world needs men like you to keep darker men in check." "I see that now. But my children need peace. They need safety. They need a life your world can't give them." He'd wanted to argue. Wanted to demand his rights as a father. Wanted to force his way into their lives the way he forced everything else. But that was the old Ha Jun. The one who'd hurt her. The one who took what he wanted without asking if it would destroy what he claimed to love. So instead, he nodded. "I'll protect them, provide for them from wherever I need to be." "I know you will," Mama Joy had said. "And when they're old enough to understand, I'll tell them who their father is, what he did for them, how he changed, even if he couldn't change completely." That had been 6 months ago. Now, Ha Jun stood in the shadows across from Mama Joy's apartment, watching her silhouette pass by the window with a baby in her arms. Amara, probably. She never slept well. His phone buzzed. Business, always business. A territorial dispute that needed his attention. A rival who needed to be reminded of boundaries. He was still what he was, a king in a dark kingdom. But maybe he could be a better king. One who protected the innocent instead of preying on them. One who used his power to keep worse monsters at bay. Not redemption, but responsibility. "Boss," his driver said quietly from the car behind him. "We need to go to the meeting." Ha Jun took one last look at that window, at the warm light, at the life his children would have. Safe, peaceful, far from him. "I'm coming," he said. But before he left, he whispered toward that window. Words Mama Joy would never hear. "I believe now. I believe there's a God. I believe he's sovereign. I believe he gave you those miracles. And I believe he gave me a purpose, too. Even if that purpose is keeping darkness away from you so you can raise our children in light." Then Ha Jun turned and walked back to his car, back to his empire, back to the shadows where men like him belonged. Behind him, in that apartment window, Mama Joy looked down at the street where she'd felt his presence moments before. Saw the empty space where she knew he'd been standing. Whispered her own prayer, "Keep him safe, Father. He may not be yours yet, but he's learning. In his own way, he's learning." She didn't see him anymore. But every month, the money appeared. Every week, her security detail changed shifts with military precision. Every time there was danger in the neighborhood, it mysteriously disappeared before it could touch her door. Ha Jun was keeping his promise, not as a father who tucked his children in at night, but as a guardian angel from hell, protecting the miracles he'd helped create from the very world he still ruled. And maybe, Mama Joy thought as she rocked Amar to sleep, maybe that was enough. Maybe God used different people in different ways. Some in the light, some in the darkness, all for the same purpose, to protect the miracles he'd made against all odds. 2 years after that night, when everything had shattered and everything had begun, Ha Jun sat in Mama Joy's living room, the apartment he'd bought for her, the safe place where she could raise the twins in peace, and watched his children play. Chibu was walking now, toddling around with the determined expression of a child who wouldn't be stopped.
Amara was quieter, sitting with blocks, building careful towers. Ha Jun was helping both of them. 10 years old now. The best big sister Ha Jun could have asked for. They look like you, Mama Joy said, sitting beside him with tea. They look like miracles, Ha Jun replied. That too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 years ago, Ha Jun would never have imagined this. Sitting peacefully with the woman he'd hurt, watching children who shouldn't exist, feeling something that resembled joy. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Always. Do you regret it? How it happened that night? Mama Joy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I regret that you were in so much pain. You thought hurting me would help. I regret the violence, but do I regret the outcome? She looked at the twins. How can I regret them? How can I regret the answer to 40 years of prayers? God used the worst moment of my life to give me the greatest gift of my life. That's what he does. He makes miracles from messes. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Ha Jun said. No. Mama Joy agreed. But you have. It anyway. That's grace. Little Amara toddled over, reaching her arms up to Ha Jun. He picked her up, and she settled against his chest with complete trust. Appa, she said, her first real word. Ha Jun's eyes filled with tears. Appa, father. A title he thought he'd never deserve, a role he'd thought his broken body could never fulfill. But God had given it to him anyway. Through the prayers of a faithful woman, through the impossibility of medical miracles, through grace he'd never earned. Mama Joy smiled at him. See miracles. And Ha Jun, holding his impossible daughter, surrounded by his impossible family, finally understood what Mama Joy had been trying to tell him for 20 years. God specializes in impossible things, and he never ever gives up on broken people, even the ones who don't deserve it, especially the ones who don't deserve it. Because that's what grace means. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in second chances and impossible miracles, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for God to restore what's broken. Drop a comment and tell me what impossible thing are you praying for? Because if God can give a 65-year-old barren woman twins and turn a mafia boss into a father, he can do anything. Until next time, remember your impossible situation might just be the setup for God's greatest miracle. Don't give up. Keep praying. Keep believing. Because miracles are real and they might be closer than you think.